Hello everyone, welcome to For His Namesake, and welcome back to God in Our Stories. And today I will read you a story that is a true story of mine, but the names have been changed because there's some people in here that probably don't want their names to be disclosed. Okay? This one is called Tomaters and Potaters. I was invited to stay there because I had nowhere else to go. I got to have my very own room at the back of that old country house. One of my windows overlooked a couple of grain bins, a shed, and cornfields beyond that. In front of my other window, there stood a wooden desk with a sewing machine on it. When the curtains were drawn to the other side, my view was that of tall corn stalks. On a windy day, I liked to pull up the window in order to hear those corn stalks sway. I had barely settled down in my new room that very first day upon my arrival, when I heard her call down the hallway. "It's time for dinner." Dinner? I thought. What a strange time for that to happen, as it was only noon. While I was unpacking, I did get a whiff of something delicious smelling in the air, but I thought Evelyn was preparing food ahead of time for the evening meal. Now, as I entered the dining room, I saw that the wooden hexagon-shaped table was laden with plates, silverware, and what looked like a 9 by 13-inch glass baking dish covered with foil. John and his grown son Alan, who at that time was my closest friend, came in from the farming, and after having washed their hands, they joined Evelyn and I at the table. We bowed our heads to pray, and Evelyn led us into a word of prayer to bless the food. It was beef roast baked to perfection, alongside potatoes and carrots, all smothered in a creamy brown sauce. Yummy! Warm rolls were also served, as well as iced sweet tea was served with the scrumptious meal. As soon as it was dessert time, Evelyn brought out a golden round cake that had round slices of pineapple on top. She looked at me and said, "Here you go, Annie. Have yourself some pineapple upside-down cake." She cut a slice and gave the first one to me. It was like nothing else I had tried before. Definitely one of a kind. A sponge-like texture, and yet a bit sticky, and a strong pineapple taste to it. Evelyn explained to me that what appeared to be the top of the cake was actually the bottom of the cake. Hence the perfect name of this cake. After the dishes were cleared from the table and the men went back to farming, Evelyn and I were left inside the home to clean up from supper. And all the while, Evelyn chatted away about country life and all that it entails. However, it wasn't long before I found out for myself how this living in the country would be firsthand. Early the next day, while it was still dark outside, I was woken up by Evelyn telling me it was time for breakfast. I tried to get dressed quickly, and I could already smell what smelt like biscuits wafting in the air. When I entered the dining room, I saw that John was already seated wearing his farm overalls. He was intently listening to a small radio. I later learned it was a weather radio. He had it on very loud, as he was quite deaf in one ear. Orange juice was also served, but it was not freshly squeezed. That was about it for breakfast, so by the time dinner came around, I was very hungry. Other than the weathermen speaking through the radio, no one else said much of anything. It was a definite stark contrast from the breakfast at my parents' house, which was talkative and full of life. Pretty much right after John and Alan had finished eating, they rose from the table and got ready to go outside to crank up their tractors. Evelyn and I cleared the table, and after she hand-washed all the dishes, I later dried them off with a hand towel that she handed to me, and then we put them away in the kitchen cabinets. Evelyn then led me outside to the rather large garden they had. She showed me all the rows of various vegetables they had planted, some of which were ready to be picked. She said, "I need to get me some tomatoes." And I corrected her by saying, "You mean tomatoes." I emphasized the last syllable. She did not react and gently removed the succulent-looking red tomatoes. Then she said, "Now I need to pick some squash." I noticed she grabbed 2 zucchinis, and once again I chirped up to say, "You mean zucchini." Evelyn then said, "There are yellow and green squash, and these are the green ones." Just when I was about to argue that while zucchini is a type of squash, but that it still had its own name, Evelyn then announced, "Before we put these in the house, we still need to get some potatoes." How annoying this was to me. Tomatoes, potatoes, squash, and oh, let's not forget the okra, she said. In another area of the garden, there were rows of what looked like long wilted stems that were beige or light brown in color. These, I found out, were the stems of garlic. Oh, how I love garlic! And fresh out of the garden had to be wonderful. Evelyn used a hoe to gently pull up the garlic bulbs and then handed them to me. Finally, we made it to the other row of what looked like cantaloupes. And sure enough, it was. I love cantaloupes. Homegrown tastes so much better than store-bought for sure. Evelyn then pointed towards some trees and said, "Over yonder, we have a peach tree and a plum tree." We then walked a little ways to two dense-looking trees. Evelyn said she began to shake a branch or two and a few small peaches fell to the ground. She asked me to pick them up and hang on to them. Since I love plums much more than peaches, I quickly walked over to where the plum tree was and was about to grab a plum off a branch when Evelyn said, "Those won't be ripe for picking until another month or two." Before I could say anything, she added with excitement in her voice, "When they are ready for picking, we can get a whole bushel full to make jelly." Jelly? I was used to eating fruit preserves, but of course I was willing to try when the time came to do so. Evelyn told me to meet up at the front porch swing while she quickly went inside the house to put up the peaches and vegetables. Soon she joined me on the wooden bench swing. It was a beautiful early summer day, with a touch of breeze out as we slowly rocked back and forth. There was a beautiful farmland with rolling hills before me and a gorgeous tree with white flowers in my view. I was told it was a pear tree. We watched and listened to various birds fly about, and in a not so far distance, we saw cattle grazing. It was all so peaceful. I was in awe of God's creation all around us. Evelyn began to share with me how she was raised in the country and then married a farmer, and together they had made a life for themselves. John planted corn and wheat and raised cattle. Evelyn mentioned that they had an abundance of pecan trees on their property, and when the nuts were ready to be harvested, they would use their own pecan picker to do that. But they would also allow individual people to come out to their property to handpick their own. After a while of talking, Evelyn said it was time to get some clothes out of the wash machine and hang them up. We gathered up the clothes together, most of which were farm shirts and overalls, and went close to the garden. There were about 3 long sturdy ropes from one post to another, and since I have always had the luxury of drying my clothes in an electric dryer, Evelyn had to show me how to hang up the clothes with wooden clothespins. "I just love the smell of clothes that have dried outside," she exclaimed. After doing the laundry, it was time to get supper ready. Supper was very simple, with mainly raw fruits and vegetables. This was definitely reversed to what I had grown up with. I had to ask for some sliced bread just to fill me up. Once again, there was hardly any conversation at the table. Evelyn would glance at her husband ever so often and then nervously make small talk. Then she announced, "Tomorrow I will teach you how to sew, Annie." Now this is something I was indeed looking forward to learning how to do. I knew that Evelyn was very gifted in this skill and had made dresses and curtains too. Soon I would come to find out that Evelyn was also an avid quilter. Crocheting and cross-stitch were 2 more activities she loved to do and was very good at. For the days and weeks to come, Evelyn showed me everything there was to know about sewing. It was from her that I first learned how to select my pattern size, then lay it on the double-folded fabric to pin, followed by cutting the individual pieces out. Then it was time to do the actual sewing with the machine. We used the sewing machine that was in my room. I enjoyed sewing and looking out the corn stalks ever so often. At the end of a few weeks, I had finally mastered the skill of sewing and was proud to have made my first dress ever. And the beautiful thing of that accomplishment was that someday I would be making dresses for my daughters. Each Christmas, I would have them select their own dress pattern from Walmart. Then we would sift through various fabrics of different colors and designs. Finally, we would get the matching thread, notions, and such. Soon, Evelyn and I would teach my daughters to make their dresses too. Sewing wasn't the only skill that I learned from Evelyn. She also showed me how to cross stitch, which I didn't have patience for. Crochet was something else Evelyn taught me to do, and after lots of tries, I finally got the hang of it. She also re-taught me how to knit, a skill my grandmother taught me many years before. It has been years since all these skills were handed down to me, but I am forever grateful to Evelyn for having taken the time out to teach them to me. Through the years, Evelyn would make homemade gifts for my family and I. There were crocheted blankets and booties for the babies, and later she asked each family member to select a theme and or fabric design, and then she would spend hours and days quilting masterpiece quilts for us to use and cherish for years to come. Out of all the different skills and crafts and such that Evelyn taught me to make through the years, there was one she never got around to showing me how to make, and that was kolaches. She had a recipe that was given to her by a relative on her husband's side of the family, and every now and then Evelyn would make these delicious Czech pastries for us. However, each time that we had a planned day for me to come over to spend hours and learn how to master the skill of making kolaches, something would come up in either of our schedules, and the date would be postponed to never learning. This I regretted. Once I bought a Czech cookbook with a kolache recipe in it, but it didn't turn out. Besides, a family recipe that is handed down the generations would be so much more meaningful. There is, however, one recipe that Evelyn did share with me and then showed me how to make, and that was eclair. This is not referring to long oval-shaped pastries with cream, but rather a dessert prepared in a 9 by 13 inch baking pan. It is made up of layers of vanilla pudding, alternating with graham crackers, cream, and topped with melted chocolate, then refrigerated for a couple of hours before eating. It is so delicious. Speaking of food, Evelyn did share with me how to make the beef roast coupled with the potatoes and carrots that she made my very first day in her home. I would later prepare and serve this scrumptious meal for my own family through the years. Looking back on all these memories now, I feel incredibly blessed to have known what it was like to have lived on a farm and learned skills that I would have probably never learned firsthand how to do had it not been that I was invited to stay there in the first place. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you've enjoyed this story of when I first arrived on a farm many years ago. And we would love for you to send some of your true stories. You can check out the protocol or criteria for doing so in the description box below. And again, thank you so much, and God bless you. Bye-bye.